Welcome back to Never Enough Novels. Today I'm sharing quick reviews of every single book that I read in March. This past month I made it through 12 books, so I have a ton of quick reviews to share, and the genres are all over the place. Everything from my typical romance to sci-fi and even a nonfiction book. So there is truly something for everyone in today's video. I like to share all of the books that I read in these quick review videos, even if I didn't love it, to give you guys honest opinions on everything and not just highlight the books that I loved. Make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel to see even more book recommendations in the future. Since I have so many to cover, let's dive right in. First up is Bridesmaid for Hire by Megan Quinn. This is a pretty typical contemporary romance. It's actually the first book in her Bridesmaids series, and I had read the second book a little while ago and loved it, so I wanted to go back and read the first, which shows that they can be pretty easily read as standalones, but if you want to go in order, Bridesmaid for Hire is the first book in the series, and her third book is coming out soon, I think in mid-April, so I'm excited to give that one a try too. Bridesmaid for Hire I gave 3.5 stars, which was a little bit lower than the second book in the series. Honestly, the only problem with this one is that it just felt too long. I think it was like 450 pages, which for me is just a little bit lengthy for a romance novel. I mean, there's only so much you can get into with a romance and with the couple. So it just dragged on a little bit, but it has all of the same characteristics that I love from Megan Quinn. There's plenty of spicy scenes, there's a lot of humor in it, and the basic concept of this book is that Maggie is a wedding and event planner who's ready to take a vacation. So she heads to this island and she meets Brody, who is her brother's best friend there, because he is attending a wedding for his boss's daughter. And these two develop a mutual arrangement where they agree to fake date to kind of help each other out, and chaos just ensues from there. So it's got a lot of typical tropes of brothers, best friend, fake dating, a tropical island wedding. So it made for a really fun read. It was just a little bit too long. Next up is Most Valuable Playboy by Lauren Blakely, and I got this one sent to me from Sourcebooks Casablanca, so a huge thank you to them. This is an older book of hers, but they re-released it with this beautiful new cover, and there's also a new end page on the inside, so it's got these really cute little footballs on the inside, which I really like. And it's a football romance, so she's normally known for her hockey romances, but I liked that this took a different perspective into the world of football, and the entire story is told from the male main character's perspective, which is also a little bit different from what you would normally find with romances, and I liked that aspect a lot. So instead of even jumping back and forth between the two, you only got Cooper's perspective on this one, which was pretty cute. So the main tropes in this one are obviously sports romance. This one is actually another brother's best friend, which is kind of funny that they were back to back, and also fake dating. So okay, these were exactly the same book, just in different contemporary romance genres. This one was a lot shorter though, so this was well under 300 pages, and I just flew through it. It's very light, easy reading, has less spice than probably Megan Quinn's, but there's still a few spicy scenes in there if you're looking for that. So this one I also gave 3.5 stars, so pretty similar to the previous book. It didn't have kind of the same depth and over the top amazing banter that I know and love from other romances, but if you're looking for a quick easy sports romance, this would be great for that. Next up is a fantasy that I really enjoyed, and I gave this one 4 stars. It's called The Games Gods Play by Abigail Owens. I found this at Barnes & Noble because it was on sale, and this beautiful deluxe edition was available for less than $20. So this was one where the cover pulled me in and made me give it a chance. But it turned into be a really interesting read. It focuses on the Greek gods, and our main character is Lyra, who is a street thief, orphan, and she was cursed at birth by Zeus to be unlovable her entire life. So at one point she's pissed off at Zeus, and she starts to try and wreck his temple when she meets Hades unexpectedly. And Hades is intrigued by her curse and by her kind of spitfire attitude, and all of a sudden she finds herself selected as Hades' champion in the Crucible. So the Crucible is a competition that happens every 100 years, and the winner basically determines the next ruler of the Greek gods. So each of these 12 gods picks a human champion, and they fight in 12 different trials that make up this crucible. And whoever is the lone winner at the end, their god becomes the next ruler. So now Hades and Lyra are basically teamed up throughout this competition. And I thought it was really interesting that we actually got to see all of the different levels of the competition. Sometimes fantasy books with that type of aspect skim over some levels or kind of put the competition in the background to focus more on like the romance or the relationship with the other characters. So I like that this one focused a lot on every single trial, and the trials were created by each of the gods, so you could see their like personality and the things we know about them shine through in the trials that they created, which made that aspect like really interesting. So if you're interested in the Greek gods and you like fantasy or romantasy books, I would definitely recommend giving this one a try. Next up is another fantasy called Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, and this is the second book in her duology. I've said this before, but I adore duologies in fantasy novels. I think it's really fun to have like a story that can be extended to another book, but you know that the series isn't going to drag on for 6, 8, or 10 books before it wraps up. So Two Twisted Crowns is the sequel to One Dark Window, so you definitely want to read that one first, but it's a really unique magic system in this world where they have 12 different cards that can perform different types of magic for the user, but they come at a significant cost. And that's one of the things I really like throughout this whole series is magic has a cost and it plays a big part in the story. So in this book, it kind of follows along with the story from the first one. We pick up like pretty much right where we left off, but we get a little bit of new perspective from two side characters in the first book. So in this one, Ione and Elm are more prevalent. So I liked that we kind of got the love story of Raven and Elspeth in the first book. Now we're focused more on Ione and Elm and get to hear more about their backstory and kind of how they fall for each other. So this one definitely has, a little bit of romance in it as well, but the fantasy aspect is also just really different and unique compared to other fantasy books that I've read lately. So I highly recommend this entire series. I loved the first book. I gave this one 4 stars, but honestly, the series as a whole is probably a 5-star recommendation from me. Getting back to contemporary romances, my next book was The Perfect Rom-Com by Melissa Ferguson. She is one of the authors I recommend all the time if you're looking for clean romance books with no spice in them. Her romance books are like charming and unique, and they don't have any spicy scenes, so she's a great option if you're looking for that. The Perfect Rom-Com is also set in the publishing industry, so if you're particularly interested in that, or like as a reader, I love hearing about how books are written and made and how they like make it to the audience. So I thought these behind the scene details about the publishing world made this book kind of set it apart from other just contemporary romances that I've read. So in this one, our main character is Bryony, who is trying to get her novel published. And so she meets with this like really prickly, notoriously hard to get agent, and he sees some potential in her, but not in the way that she wants. So he wants her to be a ghostwriter for the super famous romance author. Bryony agrees because she figures this will kind of get her foot in the door in the publishing world, and she's hoping that eventually, if she does a good job, then her own novel will have a better chance. But she just like takes off as this ghostwriter, and all of a sudden this romance author is skyrocketing to the top of bestseller lists, but Bryony is still behind the scenes, so obviously no one knows that it's actually her that is writing for this basically celebrity instead. And as Bryony and Jack spend more time together, they start to fall for each other. And this was a big ol' like he fell first scenario, which I thought was adorable. The only reason I gave this 4 stars instead of a higher rating is because it got a little frustrating that Bryony kept getting advice from different people who know more than her in the publishing world about how she could fix her novel and make it better and more appealing. And she just kind of kept ignoring it and not doing anything with it. And I felt like that might have been just for the purpose of the plot of the story, but it also just got a little bit frustrating that she wasn't taking the advice of people around her. And then there was like a bit of miscommunication between Bryony and Jack when the third act breakup happened and conflict ensued. She just wouldn't hear him out whenever he was trying to explain his situation and the reasons for his actions. But outside of those little minor gripes, this was an overall really cute contemporary romance and great for people who are interested in the world of publishing. On the darker and spicier side of the romance world, I finally got a chance to listen to Butcher and Blackbird by Brynne Weaver. So this is the first book in her, I think it's called the Ruinous Love trilogy, and it's often recommended for people who are interested in getting into darker romance books. So this one features 2 serial killers, and you meet them right off the bat, and you find out that they have committed atrocious acts, but they are the good kind of serial killers, so they are hunting down and killing other serial killers. So there's very noble intentions behind both of their acts, but at the end of the day, they have definitely a streak inside of them that is not typical for your romance characters. When Rowan and Sloane first meet, they know of each other due to their kind of notoriety as these like good serial killers who are hunting down other murderers, but they don't like immediately hit it off. However, Rowan kind of convinces Sloane to participate in this annual competition where they each are given a location and they have to figure out who has been killing in the area, and the first person to actually like kill the murderer wins the competition. So we see the two of them over the course of a few years before anything like romantic actually develops between them. But I loved this one. I gave it 4.5 stars. It was as good as everyone recommended. It definitely got a little bit gory at times because you do hear a lot about what they are doing to their victims. But the relationship between them was really unique, and it was just so easy to cheer for them. Especially like Rowan fell head over heels for Sloane, and he was just like everything that she absolutely needed in her life. I also really liked the audiobook in particular because the male narrator had an Irish accent since he is an Irish character, and I feel like both of the narrators did a really good job representing their characters. The other romance audiobook I listened to this month was called P.S. I Hate You by Lauren Connolly. And I'd been hitting deliver later on Libby on this for probably months because I knew it was really good, but I also heard that it was kind of sad, and there's definitely themes of grief throughout the entire story, but I'm so glad I finally listened to it. I highly recommend this one overall. It features Maggie and Dom. So Maggie's brother dies of cancer at a very young age, and he leaves behind this set of instructions for Maggie, his sister, and Dom, his best friend, to basically scatter his ashes throughout all these different places in the United States that he's always wanted to visit but never got a chance to. Maggie and Dom do not get along because of one night that happened a long time ago where Maggie thought that Dom was interested in her, but things clearly changed the next day, and she vowed to basically not have him in her life at all anymore. So now they're kind of thrust back together in the situation where they're going to be forced to take all of these trips together and deal with, battling their emotions about, their best friend and brothers like passing away too soon and all of their grief, and also try and figure out things between the two of them as well. So throughout the story, you follow along with them as they go on all of these different trips and get to read the brother's notes that he's writing to them, and also encouraging them along the way to basically give each other another chance. And you find out more about what was happening with Dom at the time and why his feelings for Maggie are so strong now and kind of have been for a very long time, but Maggie still does not trust Dom and does not believe his feelings are real. So it was a definite interesting mix between seeing them both grieve their friend and brother, but also start to explore this new thing between them. And overall, just a really heartwarming story with two characters that were so easy to cheer on. And it was so satisfying when they kind of finally got everything out in the open and realized that they were actually meant for each other from the very beginning, and got that happy ever after that should have been coming a long time ago. But through all of their circumstances in their lives, and even through tragedy and grief, they were able to find some hope and find love with each other. Next up is kind of just a general fiction novella or short story. It was called Small Things Like These, and it was by Claire Keegan. And I've seen a bunch of other bookstagrammers talk about this impactful little book and how much they loved it. So I finally gave it a try. It probably took me less than an hour to read. So it's not normally my typical genre. It's a little bit more on the literary fiction side, but since it was so short, it was just really easy to get through. And it just tells a story about this man named Ferguson who lives in a small remote town in Ireland. I think it takes place in the 1980s, and kind of goes through his thoughts on life and the meaning of life in the lead up to the Christmas season. So he lives with his wife and his 5 daughters and runs his own small business, and is kind of contemplating the grind of life and doing the same thing over and over again day to day, and what am I really doing here? And along the way, while he's making one of his deliveries, he finds out something shady is going on with the nuns that live in town and these younger girls who they have working with them in the laundry. And over the course of the small short story, he starts to question their decisions and basically takes a moral look at what our responsibility is when we know something is going on that shouldn't be, and do we just kind of be happy with our own lives and not rock the boat, or do we show a little bit of courage and try and make changes for these girls who are clearly in a bad situation? And according to the author's note, it sounds like they're this was based on like true stories that happened throughout Ireland during that time with the Catholic Church. So it was a really impactful little story, and even if it's not normally your type of thing, like it would be with mine, I just found it really interesting to read about this man's courage and kind of how he took a different path in life than what he might have expected. On a completely different note is a science fiction novel that I read this month, and that is called Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, and this is the first book in one of his Star Wars trilogies. So I love the Star Wars movies, and I had a lot of people recommend this book from like the 70s or something. It was written a very long time ago, but they said it's a fantastic continuation of the story after episodes like 4, 5, and 6, so like the original trilogy. So it picks up with Luke and Leia and Han and all of our favorite characters after the Empire has been defeated, but it's not completely gone. So we get a new villain that arises, and we see all of our characters that we love basically trying to create this new system of government while also dealing with this new threat from the Empire. I gave this one 4.5 stars. It felt just like a continuation of the movies. The book was really entertaining, and I'm excited to keep going with this main trilogy. But if you are a Star Wars fan, you can read any of his other books because he has an entire collection of books set in the Star Wars universe. So I'm excited to read this trilogy and then maybe continue on and see what else is out there too. Back on the contemporary romance side is Never Planned on You by Lindsay Hammeroff. This was another 4.5 star read for me. I absolutely loved her first book, Till There Was You, so I was really excited for this one to come out, and I had high expectations for it, and it absolutely delivered. The story kicks off when Allie makes a bet with a stranger years ago, and they get like matching tattoos, but she never expects to see him again because she's moving back to the States and he lives in London. However, years later, she's going to her favorite coffee shop in Baltimore, and who walks through the door but Graham, this guy from all these years ago. They can tell that sparks are still there from this like night that they shared all these years ago. But Allie works for an event planner, wedding planner in Baltimore, and when she goes to attend some meetings for the next high-profile client, who walks through the door as the groom but Graham. So Allie is like taken aback because she thought there might still be something between them, but clearly he is now off limits. However, as she gets into more details about this wedding and meets his fiance, she finds out that this is more of a marriage of convenience than anything romantic. So now she's kind of faced with this dilemma. Graham has like a very noble reason for going through with this wedding, and he needs it to happen in order to get publicity for his family business, but obviously there are still feelings for Allie, and she was kind of the one that got away. So they're both in this weird situation where they need the wedding to go through, but they also want to explore like something real between them. So I really enjoyed seeing how these two kind of navigated all the intricacies of wedding planning and different events that they had to attend together while trying to fight their feelings, but like also acknowledging that this could be something long lasting between them. And ultimately the conclusion was so satisfying. I just loved the way that she wrapped up this story for these two characters that I was rooting for the entire time. Lindsay always does such a great job including like just the right amount of humor and spice and charm in her books. And this one also has a lot of Jewish representation with Allie's family, and I just thought that added a really unique personal touch that I loved reading about too. I had to go hunt down this next book because I knew I had it somewhere in the house before I had to return it back to the library. But this one is called Dungeon Crawler Carl, and I gave this one 4.5 stars. This is another Bookstagram made me do it. Honestly, the cover turned me off so much that I almost didn't give it a try because it just did not look like something that I would enjoy. But everyone said, you have to read this like fantasy sci-fi novel because you're going to absolutely fall in love with it. And I totally did. It took me completely by surprise in all of the best ways. This is a weird book to explain to people, but I just want to thrust it in their hands and be like, hey, you just need to give this a try and read it because you will be laughing so hard and like totally invested in the story by the end. So the basic concept is that at a point in time, all of the buildings on Earth are flattened, and like most of the people on Earth inside automatically die. And whoever is left is given the chance to participate in a dungeon competition to basically try and stay alive. So it turns out there's like aliens and all these other life forms that exist, and Earth is just one of many different planets that has been populated with humans. But all of these humans that are left after this initial like decimation are now going to participate in this basically reality show competition for the entertainment of all the other life forms in the universe. So Carl is one of the humans left, and he decides to head down into the first level of the dungeon to start this competition. And along with him is his ex-girlfriend's cat, who becomes her own incredible side character in this book. So these two team up and work their way through a few levels of the dungeon, basically playing a mix of a video game and Dungeons and Dragons. They have to figure out how to fight different monsters, level up their skills, and basically do anything necessary in order to survive. But the AI that's running the game is super sarcastic and really funny. So all of the achievements that they get or loot boxes usually have some sense of humor involved in them. So I was laughing out loud so many different times throughout this book. So like I said, it just took me by surprise in the best of ways, and I highly recommend it. Even if you don't normally like fantasy books or Dungeons and Dragons or anything like that, it's still absolutely worth the read. And it's the first book in a series, so I'm excited to see more about this competition as they work their way through the different levels of the dungeon, and it kind of gets more and more complicated as they go. So I'm very excited to keep going with this series. And the one book that I gave 5 stars this past month was The Wager by David Grann. This was my one nonfiction book, possibly of the entire year, but it's a story about this shipwreck that happened back in the 1700s, and it was absolutely fascinating. I love the narrative nonfiction type of storytelling when they take a true event and write about it in a way that almost reads like a thriller and just keeps you captivated from start to finish. So the entire book is about this ship called the Wager and its crew who were on board, and all of the different horrors and things that they endured. They were part of this larger group of sailing vessels when they got shipwrecked, and the remaining crew was left on this remote island in South America with basically no hope of survival. So you've got some mutiny and a little bit of a Lord of the Flies aspect, with these men basically turning on each other, doing whatever they can to survive in unimaginable conditions. And we know, before the story even starts, that 2 different groups of survivors managed to make their own rafts or boats and get back to civilization, but they were telling 2 different stories about what happened during their time on the boat and on the island. So there was a definite level of intrigue as we kind of learned through different historical accounts about what actually happened to these men and what they went through. The author did a really great job giving us enough background information about the English Navy and how it works and what life at sea is like, while not bogging down the story with too many details. So it was enough to basically have an understanding of what was going on to make the story even more kind of thrilling without making it feel like a really boring nonfiction book. This would be a really great read for anyone who normally likes nonfiction or history, but also if you're like me and don't normally pick up that genre, I would still give this a shot if it sounds at all interesting, because it was a fascinating story and one that I will be recommending to absolutely everyone. So that wraps up my March month of reading. Hopefully you found some new to you books that you're interested in. Let me know in the comments if any of these books sound particularly interesting, or if you've read any of them already. And if you want to see even more book reviews, you can head here to see my February reading wrap up, and stick around for more book recommendations in the future.